process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deb Altschiller, who very graciously agreed to pinch hit for Rennie Cushing, who very much wanted to be here tonight, but was not feeling well. And so Deb is a wonderful rep from Rockingham 19. I have, we worked with her from Kent Street very closely. She's just such a champion on so many issues, but particularly issues of sexual assault and domestic violence, child trafficking, reproductive rights, really anything to do with children. The list can go on and on. When Deb sees an injustice, she stands up. She's not afraid to speak out. And she personally has taken a lot of slings and arrows her way. And we're grateful that that has never had her, made her step back. So with that, Deb, I'm going to turn it over. I'm just going to ask Ken if you could put your hand down. We're not going to be taking live questions at this point. So thank you.
Forgot it was up.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. That was very flattering, and I really appreciate that. I definitely am not or even going to try to fill Rennie's shoes because he fills them well himself. I actually sent him a text message earlier and said, no one can fill your shoes, actually your flip-flops, because we know that that is Rennie's preferred foot covering or not. And personally, I have to thank the Kent Street Coalition because it is, I come from Stratham, and the Stratham Dems are an incredibly vibrant and super active group of advocates. And so coming up to Concord and having the Kent Street Coalition there, seeing your faces in the hallways, really is the affirmation that government is a group project. And we're not graded on a curve. We all rise or we all fall together. So I cannot tell you how grateful I am to be part of this group, and I really appreciate it. So our focus tonight, I will launch right in, is the Free State Project and the Free State Movement. So briefly, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Free State Project, I highly recommend that you look into Granite State Progress's Free State Project Watch. They have been doing a great job of keeping track of the evolution of the Free State Project, which is coming up on its 20th anniversary. And it was started by a gentleman by the name of Jason Sorens, who is a part-time lecturer at Dartmouth College. So he is in the Upper Valley. And his idea was to create a group that had a libertarian focus, and their focus is the pursuit of the maximum freedoms of life, liberty, and property. So that is their focus. And the Free State Project was designed to bring as many people, and their target goal of 20,000. They wanted 20,000 libertarians to move to the state of New Hampshire. They had taken a vote about, and they had 10 states or so that were in the running for where their project would be based out of, and New Hampshire does have a very strong libertarian streak to it. And also there are very low barriers to entry for participation in government, because we have 400 members of the House and another 24 members of the Senate. And because our cities and towns, like we only have, I think it's 13 cities that are structured with a mayoral structure. So really everybody in New Hampshire at some point or another does a round through their select board, their school board, their land trust boards. We all participate. So the barriers to being part of the government structure are really low because we encourage such high participation. And that was really attractive to the libertarians, because if they could get here, they could create their utopians, you know, their idea of a utopian society by dismantling the structures that they don't believe in. So they have two groups of people within the Free State Project. There are Free Staters, people who have actually picked up and moved from other states and come to New Hampshire, and then friends of this Free State Project, who are native New Hampshire people or Granite Staters who have come to the Granite State prior to the Free State Project formation. So at this point, they're claiming about a membership of about 4,000 people. That's not something to sneeze at, because in New Hampshire, everything is, you know, we're all 6 degrees separated from each other. And so getting that many people in one state within 20 years is a very impressive feat. So it's hard not to give them the kudos for their tenacity, their steadfastness, and their organization skills, which is interesting because the Free Staters, the Free State Project is a project, and within that project are the Free Staters and friends of the Free Staters, and they all, you know, similar to Democrats, it's a big tent for them. And also, you know, everybody doesn't always fall in line and do all the same things. However, they have gathered enough of them to create a significant presence in our school boards, in our town boards, and in our state government. So there are about 80 people in the House of Representatives right now who identify as either friends of the Free State Project, Free Staters, or part of the Liberty Caucus. And they occasionally call themselves the Freedom Caucus. And you can spell that any way that you hear. Their goal is to decentralize all government resources and to shrink government. They are very, very fond of, I think it was Norquist who said, you know, government should be shrunk to the size that you could put it in the bathtub and drown it. And that's pretty much the goal, is to dismantle all of the functions of government. And that means schools, law enforcement, municipal services, and social services, because they are of a libertarian bent. Take care of yourselves, and if you feel so inclined, take care of your neighbors too. But anybody that I don't know and can't see, don't care. And that's pretty much how the voting goes. And you can, you know, you could go back and look at these votes. So they are particularly tenacious in dismantling the public school system. And they have enough of a presence now that the GOP caucus, and they have aligned themselves with the GOP caucus. The GOP caucus cannot maintain its majority without the Free Staters aligning with them. So this is where the tension comes in. This past session, they pushed their agenda until they got the governor to accept the divisive concepts piece of the budget into the budget. So the divisive concepts, which was a standalone bill that was destined to fail because it did not have the broad support of the House. However, the Free Staters had enough of a wedge that they managed to force it into the budget, and then also to force in a limit on the emergency powers of the government. Those were their two priorities, to get that into the budget. And they succeeded. Without them, there's no GOP majority. And so you may wonder, like, why are they aligned with the GOP? Why aren't they aligned with the Democrats? Why don't they stand on their own, as the Libertarian Party? Well, the Free Staters and the Free State Project have come into the political landscape as political shapeshifters, because they don't have a singular ideology that isn't anything other than anarchist, which is to dismantle everything around it. And that's a very, very clear goal. As I think Louise mentioned, like pouring sand into the gears, it is actually how they operate. So they are obstructionist. They are, they manage to derail meetings and postpone votes and get in the way of, they are constantly sticking a wheel in the spokes of the bicycle. So how did they get to be part of the GOP? Well, they are 100% opportunists, 100%. So they sometimes run as Republicans. They declare to be part of the Republican Party, you know, sign up. Or they run as Democrats. In 2016, there is a rather infamous duo, a father-daughter duo, who came into the who were in the legislature together, and one of them ran as a Democrat from Manchester, and one of them ran as a Republican from Auburn. And again, like both free staters, but they, you know, they're good at reading the room. So they find out what the local flavor is, and that's where they align themselves. And once they get elected, all bets are off. All they wanted was a ticket in the door. So that's how they get in. And once they're in the House, they align, they all coalesce together. So we've got we've got a free stater from Fremont, one from the Lakes region. We've got the one from Auburn. We have the majority leader who is a free stater. And so it's really important, like, what can you do? This is something that a number of the members of the Progressive Democratic Caucus have really, really not let up for as long as I've been involved with New Hampshire politics, in pushing the Democratic Party leadership to identify free staters and not let them caucus with the Democrats, because they're not going to once they get elected. And there's been some pushback on that. That's a discussion for another time. But nonetheless, again, they're political shapeshifters. They are 100% on intent on gumming up the works. And there is, I will say that it's my experience and my observation from votes, that there is a deep, deep river of misogyny that runs through the Free State Project. Their stated goal is the pursuit of maximum freedoms of life, liberty, and property, but that liberty doesn't extend to women's reproductive freedoms. They always vote against women's reproductive freedoms. As a matter of fact, in the last session that we had, a member of the Free State Project, in one of his floor speeches, said that we needed the protections of the 24-week abortion ban so that we can keep New Hampshire women hot and viable for reproduction. Right on the floor of the House. I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. So the misogyny never ceases to amaze me. And I should be used to it by now. But nonetheless, I'm really thrilled that we're having this discussion tonight. And we have some great panelists. Get your questions ready. I think the questions are only going to go in the chat. So, and that they'll be moderated because there's so many of us here tonight. Thank you all for being here. So put your questions in the chat, and I'm going to turn it back over to Louise to introduce, or to Liz.
Louise.
Liz?
Yes,
To
indeed.
Louise.
So let
All
me
right, back to
introduce,
Louise.
thank you. Let me introduce Liz McConnell. And I want, first though, let me thank you, Deb. Not only did you step in at the last minute, but as Rennie said, you know, hit it out of the park, and you just did that. So thank you very much. And we just really appreciate everything you do. And Liz, I can also bestow the same sort of praise on you. Liz is a former state rep from Brentwood. And what was your district, the 5 towns?
11. I was just Brentwood.
Oh, just Brentwood. So, and Liz was always someone, I was always amazed when we were at the State House and we were signing in on bills. Liz would be running around the State House to make sure that she was showing her support or opposition to critically important bills. And some reps make it, a real priority to do that. And it really means a lot when the reps attach their names, either, as I said, support or opposition to bills. So I was always so grateful to see Liz, and we were kind of always on the same trail as we were working our way through the State House. And also always a strong advocate. And I know that you also are very involved with local politics, and local, well, not politics, but trying to make your community, a strong and vibrant place, a strong and vibrant schools. So we welcome you tonight, and I'll turn the program over to you.
Thanks. Thank you so much. So I'm going to start with introductions for our guest speakers. And the first guest that we will have, he's actually going to be on video, is Paul Grenier. He's the mayor of Berlin. And in one of the comments that I read from Paul, at the beginning of the pandemic, he told his community, remember, we're from Berlin, we can do it. Paul has a tape message today where he talks about how things have changed and the impact the Free Staters and the far right is having on his local government. And even though he believes Berlin can do it, they have to work a little bit harder in this environment. And by the way, too, when this video goes on, Rob is going to play it. When it goes on, you might need to use your own device to boost up the volume, because it seemed when we listened to it earlier, it was a little bit low.
So,
Rob, you are
okay,
muted.
I'm
Okay,
now. Let me unmute myself, and now I'll see if I can get Paul to play here. Let's see, and you guys will tell me. Can you see that? That's a yes. Okay,
Yeah.
Good. I'll start it off.
Introduce myself. My name is Paul Grenier, and I'm currently a sixth-term mayor of the city of Berlin. Been serving for 12 years, and I can tell you that in the last 4 or 5 years, we've had a significant increase in activity of Free State movement folks and Free State-minded people. It's not just members of the Republican Party, longtime Republicans within the city. I don't think really understand the negative impact that some of these folks are about to play on the city. They are right now well organized. They are working very hard. They are putting up candidates for this November's municipal election that I think is probably the most dangerous slate of, a couple of them are the most dangerous slate of candidates I've ever seen. I think just the very, one particular person who ran for Congress last year, he would go on YouTube to espouse, this extreme gun culture, and you need to stand up for your rights, and whichever way possible. And now this person's running for city council with, with that type of attitude. Local government has to deal with a host of issues, and they want to reform government in their image. And what they want to do, what they are doing is that they're playing nice. They're being cavalier. We want to help. We want to make our community better. We've already seen what the Free State movement has done in Concord, and I fear wholesale changes will make the North Country really unattractive for some of the folks who want to escape the city and want to live in peace and tranquility and be able to work from home. Our docile lifestyle here in North Country is a huge asset that if our school systems are such that they are from the outside perceived to be poor, or our hospitals are perceived to be poor, and we can't seem to attract, what I would call the yuppies, then what future do we have here? State keeps taking away monies from local communities, despite they want to drumbeat the fact that they've given us a little extra this past session, but it was less than what the previous session gave us. The profit sharing or revenue sharing for the community, Berlin has lost $12 million since 2009 in state funding in revenue sharing and washrooms and meals and tax. So when people complain that we're not fixing our streets and we're not doing the things that we need to do for our infrastructure, the blame can be laid right on the Republican-led legislature. They want less government at a time when the need for services of government is at an all-time high. We've come off a year and a half of COVID-related activity in the community that really kind of shrunk our economy some. And that's given them kind of an opening to make a case of themselves that we're not doing our jobs. The hate mail that I've been getting from unnamed citizens in the community has grown exponentially. The Free State movement and some of the folks who have moved to Berlin are trying desperately to push out. They moved to Berlin because they like the low, the quasi, or I should say, they moved to Berlin because of our slower pace of living, our friendly atmosphere, and a live and let live style of community. But yet they want to change the very function and culture of our community that they came here to enjoy. It's pretty scary. In closing, these groups, they want to run. They have these fancy slogans as, for prosperity, but they don't tell you how they're going to get there. And none running in this current election cycle in the city of Berlin have a day of public service experience. And the folks on the city council, we've been dealing with the issues, know the issues, know the cost of the issues. And I would, I would warn the voters, anybody can put a nice 3-word slogan, but you really need to stick together and work with the folks who truly have the interests of the community at heart, not some foreign idea that's not part of the North Country fabric.
You're on, Liz.
There you go. Thank you. So if anybody knows Paul and sees him in the upcoming days, tell him for all of us, thank you so much for speaking to us about this issue. Next up, we have Jordan Thompson. He is a school board candidate from Nashua. And in looking up some of Jordan's writings, he cites a quote from Shirley Chisholm, and it says, "If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair." Well, in this current environment, I think we're dragging folding chairs everywhere, reacting to one faux outrage after the other, or one group trying to be active, trying to misguide people and misinform people about what the issues are. Nashua, as you hopefully know, or sadly know, has seen a lot of this, and Jordan wants people to get involved and to participate and to help make changes. So you're up, Jordan. Thank you again for speaking to us.
Of course. Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you to everyone that's on, Louise, all of Kent Street. My name is Jordan Thompson. Just a correction, I'm a candidate for alderman, but I am here to talk about the school board.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. We had
No
that wrong.
worries. No worries. There's so many candidates. There's so many different things. Though we do have some wonderful school board candidates in Nashua. I wear a lot of different hats. Like I said, I'm a candidate for alderman in Nashua's Ward 6. I'm also the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Nashua, as well as the racial justice organizer for the ACLU of New Hampshire. But here tonight, I'm really just here as a concerned community member trying to raise awareness about a really disturbing situation in my hometown of Nashua. As was earlier referenced, we've been dealing with a lot of issues around our Board of Education, and I've been working with coalition partners like Rights and Democracy and the Kent Street Coalition to really, stand in solidarity with our board members that are really being put to task and are dealing with a really difficult situation. Over the past several years, a lot of the board members have experienced a lot of racist targeting, and that was only exacerbated by the mask issue. Of course, they've been tasked with figuring out how to keep our children safe, how to implement common sense measures to promote science and ensure the safety of everyone, our educators, everyone in our school district. And they've been met with a lot of pushback from folks on the far right. And it's also caught the attention of some folks that are at the very farthest point of the right. I started working with Rights and Democracy and Kent Street to organize protests in solidarity with these members of the school board after a member of the so-called Proud Boy group showed up to a school board meeting in June. There was just one singular member that showed up. He showed up to harass and intimidate, as this is their MO, this is what they do, this is what the point of their group is. And our community, of course, responded in a very forceful way. We wanted to show up and show support for our school board members. When we showed up in July to the next school board meeting, there were 12 Proud Boys. They had seen all of our calls to action on social media, all of the concerned community members that had really come together to talk about what was going on. They'd seen all the conversations, and so they showed up in numbers. And they did in Proud Boy fashion what they usually do, which is harass and intimidate folks that are there to just be a part of the democratic process. Every time that we have organized one of these, what we're calling, I suppose, counter protests or protests in solidarity with school board members, we've been met by those extremists. Of course, in June, it was the Proud Boys. In July, it was a group of neo-Nazis from a group called NSC 131, which I'll cover in a little bit. And then this past school board meeting, we were met with a lot of anti-maskers, a lot of the folks that write articles, if you can call them that, on Granite Rock about how oppressive wearing a mask can be, I suppose, for them. And so we've really been trying to combat this with a message around solidarity, a message of showing support for science, for common sense, for reason, showing people that we're there not just to combat the hate that our community members are being subjected to, but also to show support for the board members and to show support for all of these common sense ideals. I want to talk a little bit about why they have chosen Nashua as this spot to gather, why they have chosen Nashua as this target. Nashua is the most diverse community in the state of New Hampshire. And a lot of these folks are coming from across state lines. NSC has roots in Vermont and in the Eastern Massachusetts, greater Boston area. It's the same situation with the Proud Boys. And they have been fed this lie of course, that has been perpetuated by folks on the right about critical race theory being taught in our schools, which of course, unless we are counting law schools, critical race theory is not being taught, though it should be. They are showing up and they're using this quote unquote anti-CRT stance to generate fear and animosity and hostility between our community residents. So they are quite literally outsiders that are coming in to infiltrate our community and to stoke the flames that the larger Republican Party has been stoking at a national level. When they show up to these events, when they show up to these school board meetings, it can be a very chaotic scene. They show up and they hurl misogynistic and anti-Semitic, anti-LGBTQ plus slurs, being very outwardly racist, being physically violent at times. Oftentimes they're met with a police presence that does not do much to stop them from continuing on. And so we've really had to rely on teams of peacekeepers like the folks at Kent Street who have been incredibly helpful over the past several months to protect us and protect our community. And that's an unfortunate reality. But I'm here first and foremost because I want folks on this call to know that Nashua may be one of the first communities to deal with white supremacist violence in this form, but it is certainly not the last in the state of New Hampshire. They've chosen Nashua very strategically, but it could happen anywhere. It has happened everywhere across the state over the past few years. We've seen it. We've seen them be emboldened by the former president. We've seen them be emboldened by legislators in the House. And we have to, be vigilant now more than ever. So I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to be here. And I am always around if folks would like to talk about it at length, but this is a very critical moment where we have to decide as a state to really speak up and show up to the school board meetings. We know that they're long. We know that they are on strange schedules, but if it's happening here in Nashua, it could happen anywhere. So we have to remain vigilant.
Thank you so much, Jordan. It was awesome to hear you. And I apologize. I'm sorry about the about your position. So, but good luck with that as well, too.
Yeah, we're just so very glad that you're running, Jordan.
I know, that's right.
Also, I think it's your grandmother, right? Gloria Timmons, the wonderful Gloria Timmons, who's
Yes, the wonderful Gloria Timmons is also running for Alderman at Large in Nashua. And to be very frank with you, I suppose that is why I very much became so involved in organizing around this, because my grandmother's on the Board of Education, and to see her be a target of so many of these racist attacks over the past several years, this is not a new issue, but it has really come to the surface over the past several months. And of course, this is something that affects me on a community level, but also on a personal level. So it's important sometimes to make that connection.
That's great. Our next speaker will be Andrew Hosmer, who, hopefully this is correct, he is the mayor of Laconia, the current mayor of Laconia. And regarding the people of Laconia, Andrew says they want to be proud of the person who is serving as mayor and has values that reflect well on the community. Andrew says that he has a sense of empathy and is open-minded. We are happy to hear what Andrew has to say about governing in Laconia and how it is changing and needing more empathy than the right now refuses to give its people.
Thanks very much, Liz, and thank you to the Kent Street Coalition for putting this meeting together. And Jordan, I just wanted to say how powerful your words were and sobering in so many respects to realize what's going on in some of our communities. And it was just really, it's really resonating with me right now. And so thank you for your service. Thank you for your courage and your willingness to come tonight and share with us. It means a lot. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrew Hosmer. I'm a former state senator from Laconia for 2 terms. And I was recently in 2019 elected mayor of the city of Laconia. I am running for reelection in right now, with a primary coming up on September 14th, and hopefully a general election coming up on November 2nd. But certainly, we're not taking anything for granted. I have taken a particular interest in really what's been going on with our school board. Quite frankly, I will tell you that when this idea of CRT came out, I was unclear exactly what it was, but it was clearly creating an awful lot of a discussion within the city, and seemed to be an awful lot of passion around the subject. So decided to just reach out to a few friends and ask, help me understand this better. And I certainly reached out to my friends in the school board and within various school administrations or SAUs and asked about it. And then I started attending more and more school board meetings. And you know, I will say this, and I'm not trying to be overly dramatic about this, but it's been clear to me that there's a connection between what's going on at our local school board meetings right now and some of the behaviors that took place on January 6th, 2021 in our nation's capital. In the city of Laconia, we have what I think is a very good school board, all in all, a school board that is committed to what's in the best interest of our students. They value public education. They work very hard. Their meetings are open. Anyone from the city who'd like to come in and comment, they are welcome to do so. But what we have seen in the city is a more and more disruptive presence, I would say, at these meetings by people. And it's usually the same 8 to 10 people coming in, whether it's they're commenting on CRT or diversity, DEI, or whether they're talking about masking. And when they pose questions, I've been particularly proud of our school board and our superintendent, who speak up and answer questions directly. When asked if CRT is part of a curriculum, you know, they say, no, it's not. When they're accused of pushing an agenda, perhaps this idea that somehow liberals are dominating school boards and brainwashing educators and students, they push back. But this group is not particularly interested in hearing those answers. I think they would not be satisfied unless they have a full-throated admission to whatever is being alleged. And anything short of that, they think of it, they use it as justification for creating chaos within a school board. And as someone said earlier, like throwing sand in the gears and grinding it to a halt. I think we had experienced that here in the city at one point earlier this spring, where the school board had to adjourn its meeting because of the disruptive nature. This idea that somehow duly elected people do not hold the views of some of these antagonists, therefore the antagonists can justify their behavior to grind all of these proceedings to a halt, is something that was, again, strikes me as something very similar to January 6th, where people were not satisfied with the outcome of an election. Therefore, they felt justified in behaving the way that they did. Though we're not seeing the violence, certainly not in Laconia, thankfully, I think we are seeing the same type of ideology that the ends justifies the means, and acting out is their patriotic duty. I've gone to these meetings just trying to understand who these people are and why they're behaving the way that they do, and I can't, quite frankly. But this is not anything different than what we're seeing around the country right now. This consumption of a national narrative out there about what's going on in our public schools, a devaluing of our public education system. We're seeing it. Certainly, I saw it when I was in the Senate, when there were various attempts to talk about government schools and government education, which became sort of a part of the vernacular, and certainly could understand where they were, unfortunately, where they were coming for and what little value they had for public education. If this is, I feel particularly motivated when I see our school board members volunteering their time and working as hard as they do. We're very fortunate to have a terrific superintendent and other administrators within the SAU in Laconia, but they take this abuse twice a month at the school board meetings. And the last meeting I attended, it was the same group of people pounding away, being insulting, being disruptive. And these folks at the school board meeting are clearly, they're tired and to some extent, unfortunately, beaten down. And I think they desperately need the support of like-minded people who appreciate not only public service, but also civil discourse. That simply because you're dissatisfied with the outcome of an election, or you may not share the views of your school board member, the fact is, it doesn't mean, that does not give you the right to behave the way you have been behaving, which is, shouting people down, threatening them, intimidating them, chilling free speech. And I think these people really do need the support of like-minded people who value this type of public service. The election that I have coming up right now, there is one candidate who has taken received a particular amount of attention because of a racist and anti-Semitic cartoon that she copied from the Daily Stormer, a neo-Nazi website, and then posted it to a couple of social media platforms. Initially, one of the platforms immediately dropped it and said that it didn't meet within their standards to publish. So she went ahead and put it on another social media platform. When asked about it, what she wanted to do was say, well, she didn't know, she didn't understand, and then proceeded to blame fellow members of the school board who didn't back her up and protect her rights to, whether it's free speech or freedom of expression, I'm not quite sure what. But this seems to have emboldened this segment of the population here in Belknap County and to some extent Laconia. I still believe they're in a minority and they're far and few, but that is really that's the type of person that seems to be getting so much validation from either social media or from some of these, what I would characterize as more radical groups out there, more radical segments of the electorate. And they're being emboldened now to really step up and take on not only for school board seats, but for city council and for mayor seats. And I don't begrudge anyone for running for office. I think competition is good, makes us better candidates and makes us better public servants. What I am concerned about is really the platform that they run on here. And the ideas that they embrace, the justifications they give for this type of behavior. And the fact is, those that support them step up and are not afraid to use intimidation tactics to shout others down and keep good people away from stepping up and doing what's right. So with that, that's what the election landscape looks like here. And happy to take questions when the appropriate time arises.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you, Jordan, both powerful stories. I just want to jump in before I turn it back over to Liz to say one thing about Don Johnson, Jim Spillane. You explained what Don Johnson did. She's a state rep. Jim Spillane out of Deerfield, said that it was open season on anybody who had Black Lives Matter signs in their yards. We recently had Sylvia, who said that they would do anything in service, say anything, despite being racist, despicable lies about whole groups of people in order to move their movement forward. And yet we've heard, I guess the speaker did come out and condemn those words, but he didn't take action against any of these three members. And that's a real problem, that this behavior is happening locally. And when our leaders have a chance to speak out forcefully against it and also to put action behind those words, they repeatedly fail to do so. And so we see, the local folks are emboldened. So Don Johnson's emboldened, Spillane's emboldened, Sylvia's emboldened. We had 6 or 7 members of the House who went to the AG and said our government was illegitimate and the elections were illegitimate, and yet they still serve in our legislature. So it's a reinforcement mechanism that they've got going on, and it has a power and a synergy of its own. So I just wanted to interject that before turning it back over to Liz.
Hey, Louise, will you talk about the chat? People don't seem to understand that messages or questions need to go into the chat.
Sure. And I'm sorry that the chat is funky tonight. We just had so many people. We thought it might be distracting to have a whole lot going on in the chat. The host can see questions that you put in there. And we will have a period of time after our panel discussion where we will look at those questions and pull a few to ask. But I know those of you who have attended other Kent Street meetings, usually we have that available kind of to share things. Any of the links I've shared we'll send out afterwards. So I apologize for the confusion. Thanks, Rod, for that clarity, for asking for that clarity. And with that, Liz, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh God, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. It is good to see that there are so many people trying to be involved, trying to get their questions out because they feel the urgency of that. I have to say, Louise, I think that your comment about sand in the gears, I don't know, we got to figure out how to expand on that and make it into a bumper sticker or something like that. We've got to clear the sand from the gears or something. So I think my next section is to introduce Manny Esposito, sorry, Manny, Espedia, to talk with us a little bit. I know, not that I want to go down that path of doom and gloom again, but we do know Manny in Nashua had white supremacists actually threaten him. And again, it's the same kind of relentless attacks that we see throughout our state, throughout our state government and our local government as well. And calling this out, I think, is a good thing. And after we hear Manny talk about how it has impacted him, we'll have a panel discussion and talk about what we think we can do for solutions. Manny, are you there?
Oh yeah, right here.
Always so good to see you, Manny. I'm so sorry. And there you are, one of my favorite state reps. Yay.
You're one of my favorite honorables.
Right.
We'll have you back in the body next year. But thank you all so much for opening this space up for us. My name is Manny Espedia. I serve as the representative out of Nashua. Also serve as president of New Hampshire Young Dems and as the Northern Regional Director for Run for Something. So yeah, no, it's been, I think over the last few months, it has definitely been eye-opening to see these type of white supremacists come into our communities and be so bold, so to speak. I think, within my experience, it was very difficult. It was tough not to think about the safety of myself and my family, but also I think looking back, I'm not the only one who's been targeted. I think, what I worry is about all the other folks who are, trying to live their lives, trying to provide for their families, and who feel threatened and who feel like they're, not wanted, which is the farthest from the truth here in New Hampshire, where we at least the majority of us want to be welcoming and want folks to feel like they're, like they can be a part of our community. And so, to connect this with what's going on in the New Hampshire State House, it's been, and not just the State House, but the entire, local government. It's been terrifying to see this kind of coalition of folks, of people who say they are, that critical race theory is being taught in my school, and I don't believe in masks, I don't believe in vaccines. And it's kind of like, and who are anti-transgender, like they are kind of coalescing in this incredibly dangerous group. And they're running for office. They're deciding that they want to be the ones who make the decisions, and that why not? And that's not to say they're going to win, but that is, it is a start of, having their ideas start to become mainstream. And that is the furthest thing that we want, is to really kind of allow their ideas to be okay. And so, I think making sure we call out what is racist and what is targeting specific groups of folks. And then also, making sure that we have great candidates who end up also running against these people. I think there was a quote by Ralph Reed, who was the former head of the Christian Coalition, who says, "I would rather have 1,000 school board members and have no president than to not have the presidency." Like, and that's real. That to them, they know, conservatives know that the seat of power isn't just at the top. It is at the foundation, and those are our local offices, those are select board positions, those are our school board positions, our city councils. So making sure that we are keeping our eye on the prize, and making sure that we don't forget those positions, and that we have great folks. And for our organization, like New Hampshire Young Democrats and Run for Something, supporting that pipeline of 18 to 4, like for us it's 18 to 4-year-olds, but just in general, creating that pipeline for folks who are running for maybe election official, like supervisor of the checklist for once, and then they decide I want to take a step up, I want to do something, and now I want to run for state representative. It builds our pipeline, it builds our next generation of leaders, and then it also helps to hopefully remove people who would end up running for those same positions. So this is for a lot of these folks who center themselves around hate, this is a long-term strategy. They've been emboldened by Donald Trump, but they are really taking action to actually be a part of our governments, and to really try to like I think it's catchy, throw sand at the gears and really kind of dismantle it from within. I actually, funny enough, I had a conversation with a more conservative lobbying group, who more of a business type lobbying group, actually is what I should say. And they told me that they've never been more, they typically work with Republicans, but they've never been more hesitant. Like, they've never seen our caucus being held hostage by this Freedom Caucus group. So, for those of you, like, some of it's really, I'm not gonna lie, some of it is easy to laugh off. I'm like, oh, these guys, they seem completely, just they're kind of a joke. Like, who would propose such legislation? But they have so much power, and it is like, to see 35 to 40 members of the Freedom Caucus and Liberty Alliance, like, they're able to wield their power. And they were able to, like, this budget, the reason they were able to get it so extreme is because of members like that, because our speaker doesn't believe he has really kind of reign over them, so he has to really kind of bow to their needs. So to see that Republicans are worried about this, like what he was referred to himself as a practical Republican, like it is telling of the time we are in, and that even folks who believe themselves as mainstream Republicans are scared of these these Republicans that we have now. So I think the 2022 election is going to be incredibly important, and we're going to fight like hell to make sure we retake our House and Senate. But the local elections are incredibly important, because we cannot give these folks an inch, because they'll run with it. As we saw, like Don Johnson, who is Mayor Hosmer's opponent, was a school board member. So they start them at the local level. So I think we have to be really intentional about building that pipeline. And I think it's good for us in the long term, as we also help create, like for example, Catherine Rombo started out, was a town councilor. So that win happened because we were able to get to have a really strong candidate who was already familiar with the voters. So looking at it in the long term for us, building out our local committees, building out our local our town office officials, it's going to help us out in the long run. And there are people like the New Hampshire Young Democrats, like Run for Something, that are here to help, and that are here to do whatever we can to help supplement any efforts on this, because like very common saying, hate has no place here in the Granite State, and we want to make sure that those people never, they never had have a position of power in our state.
All true, Manny. I can't even tell you. I do want to mention to people, one of the reasons why I was asked to be here on this panel, I believe, is because even though I joke that I'm retired as a state representative, that retirement, so to speak, didn't last too long, because we did have a local election after in March was our election here in Brentwood, and we in the town recruited 12 people to run for open seats, from school board to select board to planning board to everything, and got all 12 of those people elected. So, and that in itself is helpful, because some of the pushback that we're seeing, like on the idea that we could have criteria where children would have to wear masks in schools, and people are beside themselves that, masks are restraints and everything else. Well, our school boards are the ones that vote, our school board members are the ones that vote for that stuff. And because we got people elected, we were able to thwart their efforts. Of course, now you can imagine they're suing our SAU. So tomorrow I get to go to Rockingham Superior Court to just witness them and let them know that we are watching them, and we're not going to let them get away with this. But these are the things that we have to face. And believe me, I know that next year it's not going to be a surprise to them that we're electing people. It's going to be more difficult. However, more people are seeing what's going on, and that's part of what we need to do too, is bring that to people's attention. These people are not the majority. They might be loud, they might be obnoxious, and they might have control of some things in your town, but they are not the majority. And so to bring other people in the community together to say, we need to make this stop. I don't know who it was that said something about civility. That's what we need to bring back, and that's what we're aiming for, at least in my community, and I'm sure so many other communities in New Hampshire. So Manny,
Can I just jump in for one quick second? Brentwood's also part of the SAU with Exeter
yes.
as well, right? And there's the whole unfolding around CRT and going after the
CIJ position. Yep,
yes.
They're calling that CRT. All of that has been happening in our community, and we have people that are going to be plaintiffs at this hearing tomorrow. Again, calling masks restraint or something like that. Communities, people from Stratham, people from Exeter. We always have a really good contingent from Brentwood, unfortunately, and Kensington, I believe it is. So, but again, we're not going to stand by. We're going to go to that meeting. It's a public meeting. We're going to go to it. We're going to be there and document it, because ultimately, when we put out our communications campaign, we are going to show the differences between people who think they can bully us and think they can push through things just because they scream the loudest. That doesn't mean that they actually represent the people in our communities. But thank you. Sorry to get on that tangent, but it's driving me crazy. So for Jordan and Manny, especially being from Nashua, I know that Jordan had said one of the reasons why Nashua is being targeted is because of your diversity there. So you're seeing that pushback. And I wonder, as you see this intolerance on the right in these loud voices, how do we go about being more inclusive for people of color, LGBTQ people, and women in our local governing and state legislature? Are there affinity groups that you're working with? I know Manny obviously, has his project, but who is it that you reach out to? How do you get those people included?
I'd like to just give a shout out to Jordan, who working with Black Lives Matter, and like really working just not just in Nashua, but the rest of the state, helping with Manchester and the Seacoast, working collaboratively. I mean, that is one group. There are, our city has a, cultural connections committee as well. So there are other facets, and I encourage everyone to always just to look at the other groups that are within your own city that really try to make people feel included. We also have One Greater Nashua, groups like that like from the United Way that basically are, they're trying to bring in especially like new Americans and folks like that. So I mean, in terms of the political side and the electoral side, like, encourage those folks to be involved in your local town committees, encourage those folks to run for office. I mean, I think that representation matters a lot. So making sure you have those folks, start building that bench too, so to
Right.
speak.
Right. And how do you reach out to them? Do you get like a list of something? Do you troll Facebook to see who is who seems to lean on your side? How is it that you put that list together of people that you want to talk to?
I would say that a lot of it is about building relationships past election cycles, especially when you're going into these communities and you're building relationships and you're talking to folks that may not be previously involved in electoral organizing. They really take to like understanding that there's a difference between a kind of organizing that is transactional and a kind of organizing that is like transformational, and kind of organizing that is really focused on investment and people and communities in the long term. So I think that makes a world of difference. But Manny said it best. I mean, representation absolutely matters. You have to support the organizations that have been doing the work, follow the lead of those folks like, of course, Black Lives Matters, the Greater Manchester, Nashua, and on the Seacoast NAACP chapters, supporting in Nashua, which I'm sure the work bleeds over, but Our Moment, which is the PAC that Manny is a part of, that is supporting BIPOC and LGBTQ plus candidates running for office. There's so many different opportunities across the state to support powerful candidates, but also just regular folks who want to organize in their communities around these issues that affect them. So electoral politics is super important, but it's not all there is to this.
And can I just jump in here too to expand on your question, Liz, which is, in the face of the sorts of things that you and Manny have described, and that we know other candidates face, BIPOC folks, LGBTQ, trans folks, new Americans, a range of folks who, when they step up to participate and run for office or to be vocal advocates, I think of Asma from Rights and Democracy, they're targeted in a way that other people are not. And so in addition to the financial support and the supporting Black and Brown led organizations and other impacted group organizations, how can we offer, more support in terms of trying to take some of that burden onto our shoulders as allies and supporters? Are there ways that we can help beyond the financial or, knocking doors or the typical kinds of things we might do for elected candidates or other advocates? How can we both best help with that?
I mean, show up. I mean, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we are testifying on bills. Like I'd say, like for us, for example, like one fun example is, we're gonna try to put in a repeal for divisive concepts next year, next week. So that's gonna be something where I think we're gonna need a lot of support in. But like, on not just regret, like trying to undo the regressive, but trying to move forward towards the progressive and get good like things that are going to be proactive in people's lives. So I would say showing up, obviously not gonna not say don't donate, like please donate and support, like financially that goes a long way, and we're super thankful for that. And I think, for me, thinking about this in the long run, I think it is just making space and bringing folks in and trying to create more relationships. I will always say it is like, especially with the Latino community, it is a very like, you gotta meet them where they're at. So I think like trying to do what you can to like start building those, like meeting those folks and try to like, help them out and like see how you can really just create a greater sense of community for everybody.
I want to add to that. I mean, Manny said it best, and he uttered one of my favorite phrases ever, which is meeting people where they are, especially in these communities down here. I mean, a lot of these folks have never engaged in the political process before. They know their stuff because they know what affects them in their community, but you really have to meet people where they are in their level of engagement. It's really, really important to recognize that not everybody comes to this work on the same playing field. But I would also say, yeah, showing up is super, super important. Sometimes it's just checking in on your organizer friend, on your candidate friend. Like I'll give a shout out to Louise. Over the past several weeks, because of my interactions with NSC, I've received some death threats, and it's been sort of a very difficult time generally. And just to have that, shout out from Louise, like, hey, I wanted to check in with you and make sure that you're all right and that you're feeling safe. And also, I mean, the amazing team of peacekeepers that came out to the last Nashua school board meeting. We had almost, I want to say 15, 20 folks show up to that. I mean, that is what being an ally looks like. I know that not everybody is in a situation where they can just, come down to Nashua on a Monday night and show up like that. And there are certainly other ways, but that is just incredibly impactful. So thank you again.
It was important to be there because you folks, you and Sam on the front line, and we were, thank you for inviting us to be there with you.
I can't say enough about Kent Street Coalition for that kind of stuff too. In Brentwood, we had, again, it's the same stuff, but we have a local newsletter that's funded by our town that decided after the election that they wanted to print a letter, a essay titled Racism from a White Man's Perspective, which was a totally racist article. And so there was pushback from the town, but there were also many threats and many aggressive people, and to have Kent Street there for us was really, really helpful. We had a vigil, and we needed that support, and again, it's not just the stuff that they do in Concord and the signs that they hold and all of that, but it is definitely the community outreach. So and I don't know, I'm looking at Andrew up there in Laconia. I don't know what Kent Street does for Laconia, but I was thinking about, as we were talking about how to bring people in and, meet people where they are. Laconia probably is a little bit different, Andrew, because you're a vacation area kind of, so not everybody that comes through there lives there. And how do you feel like you can connect with people, make a successful campaign for yourself? Well, what is it that you do up there that any of us could help you with as well?
Thanks for asking, Liz. And I will say in 2019, it was in a really tough campaign to see Louise and her team come to Laconia and just be there on Saturday mornings, supporting, knocking on doors, helping with lip drops. I think I see a lot of candidates and electeds online now. You know what it's like when you get into the thick of a battle and someone shows up and says, "How can I help you?" Right here, right now. It is so uplifting and energizing. And it's something I will be always be grateful for. So, sometimes that's all it is. Sort of like Jordan and Manny were talking about, just you show up someplace and say, I'm here to support you. Even if it's not doing something that we may think is significant, the fact that there's a body there saying, I hear you, I feel you, I'm with you, and I'm here to support you. It means so much. It puts a little more energy in a candidate's step, and a little more confidence when they knock on a door or bump into a voter. But, there's no secret sauce here in Belknap County. We are our House delegation and our senators, it's all Republican. It is one party rule. We've swung back and forth over the years a little bit, but it's really face-to-face interaction with people as best we can, even in this, pandemic time frame that we're all operating in. It's listening to people. It's doing what I think so many of our antagonists out there at public meetings don't do, which is to sit and to listen and to be open to discussion. And not necessarily to win every debate with a person, I find, but somehow just having a degree of empathy and hearing them out and not having an answer for them that moment, but just sort of to let it percolate within our own minds as we go about our daily business. I think that I think that probably serves us all really well, whether it's personal, professional, or political. And it's something that I need to be reminded of because I am a known Democrat here in the city that is heavily Republican. Somehow it came together for me in 2019. And I certainly think the difference, the contrast between the candidates in 2021 right now is even more distinct. But I think we have to push back because I have to believe that people's better angels are there. They're listening, they're watching over this process, and they will respond when we listen to them and we speak authentically in response to them.
See, Andrew, empathy, I did mention empathy when I introduced you, and that is what you're speaking. And, and when we talk about canvassing, it is so crucial, and it is crucial to be able to show somebody that you or people that represent you when they're knocking on doors, have their best interest at heart and want to listen to them. It is, believe it or not, it's a whole lot easier to do than it is to go to a meeting where there's 30 people yelling and screaming at you. At least when you knock on a door, you're helping a candidate one-on-one. And if the person's not nice, you can easily walk away. It's a whole lot easier to do that than it is to, have to sit through an hour meeting and have people screaming at you. So again, I can't plug canvassing enough because it is actually, in my mind, a fun thing, but some other people might not agree with that.
I think too, Liz, that there is this narrative that government does not work in the interest of all of us, that it's out to take advantage of the average person. The fact is, if we change that narrative by being good listeners and maybe when elected, following up, or even you don't have to be elected, but following up on a concern that someone may have, I think it starts to change the narrative enough in people's minds that, there are people out there who actually do care about your well-being. And we are willing to do something for you, not looking for anything in return, but saying, we as part of government, as a mayor or a city councilor or a state representative, I'd like to try and help you and let me work at it. And I think people genuinely really appreciate that regardless of the party that they belong to.
Yeah. And maybe even debunk some of the things that they listen to, they hear on, they see on Facebook, they hear, on television and stuff like that too. That is important.
Yeah, and maybe we could get to that, how folks think we should deal with that issue, because it's such a major issue, this idea of misinformation. What happened at the DHHS meeting about the vaccine registry was a notice went out over Granite Grok and other avenues, Rebuild New Hampshire, et cetera. And it was just one deceptive lie. I mean, I'll call it what it is. They're lies. It's a voluntary registry. It's not a vaccine passport. It's not going to force people to have to get vaccines. It's a voluntary registry. And these are some changes. We've seen this around that are being made to make it work better. That's what that meeting was about. And yet to motivate people, they put these lies out. We've seen that around CRT. We've seen that around voting. We've seen that as a major tool that the Free Staters and the right have used both in the legislature at the local level and nationally. And so I'm wondering if the panel could perhaps speak about how we confront the misinformation and the lies, because right now the lies seem to take hold, and then they drive they're able to use that to drive a lot of the policy positions that they're interested in.
I would say the first thing is something that I learned working on now Vice President Harris's presidential campaign. She had this saying that she would always say is that you never let someone else tell you who you are, you tell them who you are. And so I think that resonates a lot here. We have to like tell people who we are. We can't allow them to completely control this narrative. We can't allow them to completely control our messaging in a way that we're reactionary. So we have to get ahead of their narrative. I think that when it comes to misinformation online, something that I found to be very healing is to not engage with it. I think there is a portion of people who read misinformation in good faith and they believe it. And if they were educated on the issues, if someone stepped in and said, hey, maybe think about that a little bit more critically, then they might have a different opinion. And then there's another segment of the population that is dedicated to operating in bad faith, that is constantly operating in bad faith and does not care about the truth. We should not be wasting our time trying to sway the minds of people who are dedicated to the worst intentions possible. So I think that we really need to be intentional about making that distinction when we're thinking about messaging, when we're thinking about narrative. We really have to be focused on the people that may be led astray, but can be brought back through reason and common sense. I think that's the most effective way to combat some of this misinformation, being intentional and deliberate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that those are good points. Liz, others have thoughts about confronting the disinformation and also about the messaging, which is the other piece of, how we get our message out.
Yeah,
I have to tell you, Manny, guess what lie they stuck to me when I ran for the second time for a state rep? That I voted for an income tax, I mean, that was just everywhere. And they got it out before. I mean, even though I published what we had done, it didn't matter. They got that out there. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I remember, like, the funny thing is, it's funny, Representative Almy and I were talking about it, and we're like, we lowered people's property, like we actually lowered.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The long run, like we did a service for the people of New Hampshire in 19 and 20, but it's just, I think the disinformation is so strong, and most people get their information from Facebook, from what they see on social media, and a lot of that sometimes is from people they think, people that they trust. And so, that is why it is so important for us to, have conversations in person, like when able, like when we're safely, like where it's safe, like, because I think at the end of the day, like, like we're still in the middle of this pandemic, but as we safely try to go out there, like we have to engage folks as best we can. Otherwise they're gonna just continue to consume this false information. So A, please like report it whenever possible, but B, also just have the conversation with your friends, your family, your neighbors. And like there are folks that you may not be able to save, but for those who you think you can, like try to have that conversation.
Thank you, Manny. Thanks, Jordan. Louise, I don't know where we are for timing. What are your thoughts? Did you want to do a question and answer? Do you want Manny to speak more about run for something?
Yeah, I'm thinking, why don't we have, there's one more question I wanted to just ask that we talked about a little bit earlier, Liz, and then let's have Manny give us you spoke some to it already. So I think, but just a little bit more about how maybe people can engage. And then we'll move to the question session. But one of the things I wanted to just raise, and I know, Andrew, you're seeing this, with the CRT in your district, there are these wedge issues that are being used to motivate and propel people to action on the right. Whether it's CRT, whether it's the masks or the vaccines. We'll see what happens, with other issues. I'm wondering what do you all see as the issues that can motivate us to action? Because that's really what it comes down to. And to the point about misinformation, that's one reason I value canvassing so much, is it's those one-on-one conversations that we can have that I think are most effective in combating some of that disinformation. But what do you all see as, an income tax in New Hampshire? Liz, you're right. Melanie, I know that Senator LeVake is on the call, and welcome, Senator. I know you really got hit with the income tax issue as well. And I just think that maybe I can ask you to unmute and just say a couple words about how that played out for you too, because you had a very close race and you started seeing signs go up, and we didn't really fight back enough against that messaging.
Yeah,
are you there, Melanie? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Louise, and thank you everyone for being on the call and for all the great speakers. The last election cycle was an anomaly with COVID. So, people could put up their big signs and we had no voice to counter that except for our mailers that we sent out. And it's really, I believe that the way that we counter it this time is that we have to knock on doors and step away, still being safe, but we have to be able to plead our case by being who we are and not letting someone control our narrative. Similar to what Jordan said about Kamala Harris, we have to give our narrative and who we are. So I think starting early, for one thing, is going to be huge for us. And as many of you know, I started with the NHDP as the director of outreach. I'm really excited. They are staffing up like you would not believe, and we are starting early. So this is not going to, we're not going to let this happen again. They're going to say lies. That's how they are. And our ammunition is being there and stating our case and who we are. And that means going to school board meetings too, and speaking on behalf of our schools and letting everybody know, letting our neighbors know what is going on in our state. So thank you very much, Louise. Thank you all for what you do.
Thank you so much for jumping on. You. I mean, talk about voting rights. I see the Protect Our Vote.
I know, I saw that in the background.
Always. Been so lucky to have Senator LeVake. She was in the Senate fighting hard and continuing to fight hard. So thank you very much for saying a few words here, putting you on the spot, but I know you're always up to the challenge. Thank you. But I do wonder what, are there issues proactively? There's the reactive to the wedge issues that they are putting forth that motivate their base. What are the ones that we see motivating ours? I mean, I think clearly abortion is going to be one of those. What else are people, as you're out talking with people, what are the issues that you find are really engaging people and motivating them to action?
Housing, like huge in our state, and it's housing, it's college affordability, it is childcare. There are so many issues that hurt young families and that we need to address in our state, because we are losing young people at a clip that is not sustainable. And so this also bleeds into then not just childcare, but like care, like adult care, like for for folks in like nursing home shortages. So we are seeing like, you know, the lack of mental health resources. So I think there's a lot of issues that are affecting the folks here in New Hampshire, that if we had, you know, if we're able to retain our young talent, it would like solve a lot of these issues. And we're just seeing that, you know, the New Hampshire GOP is just like, you know, they will do whatever it takes to make sure that, you know, to not care about these issues and to really kind of take away funding from these issues. So, you know, I think, and what my final thought is that, you know, education, it really like people move, a lot of young families move to New Hampshire for better schools. So when our schools are bad, it just may, or when our schools are defunded through the process of vouchers, it is hurting our ability to like, you know, attract young people, young families to move here as well. So that's, you know, those are some of the issues that you will see full on display next year in the State House that we're going to be fighting for.
Liz, I think I would agree with Manny on that. And housing is a big issue. Homelessness, and as it relates to housing, certainly as well, is a huge issue and a very complex issue to get our arms around. So that those are two big issues, and I really think some of the legislature and the governor's behavior around reproductive rights is a very, very big issue that, you know, right now I see it as maybe the #1 issue across the state that can get people motivated, I hope.
I think it's the Achilles heel of the governor too. I think he's going to be sorry that he passed the budget the way he did.
Well, he certainly comes across as to impotent in that he couldn't get a budget in place without having to have these policy issues contained in HB2.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we turn it over to Manny to give the kind of elevator speech about, because we heard the bigger speech, but to hear Liz, I'll turn it back to you to.
Yeah, Manny, if you can just give us an idea of how we as even me for my town, you know, I shot the moon when I got 12 people to run for office last time. It's going to be really hard this time. And so how can I use your program to get more people in my community to want to step up to the plate?
Sure. So Run for Something, we're an organization. We support candidates 18 to 40 who are running for the first or second time and that are running for state and local office. There are a ton of organizations that will help on the federal level. You have, you know, a lot that are doing stuff on the state level. You see very few doing any on the local level. So we're, you know, here to help fill that void. And we're also, you know, we support Democratic candidates. So we're really trying to build the progressive pipeline for the next 30 years. But also, you know, we do offer resources. I'll post it right now on our website for anybody they can use. And we are a national organization. We've developed partnerships with, you know, organizations such as Act Blue, Emily's List, the Collective PAC, and other organizations that are doing, you know, awesome work out there as well. So we're, you know, we understand that in democratic politics, we don't exist in a vacuum, that we, you know, there are so many other organizations doing excellent work. So we're trying to bring them all together and like trying to give resources to candidates for the first time who are running for their first time. And so, you know, it's at runforsomething.net and candidate-resources. I'll put it in the chat right now. But the other thing is, you know, it's funny, we started using this. We have our runforwhat.net, so you can check out our, it's basically like it'll list where you can run in New Hampshire and see, like, you know, what the filing requirements are. I mean, I feel like New Hampshire's a pretty easy spot. Like, you know, we know what mostly the stuff that we can run for. Other states, they have things like water boards, like water usage boards, basically. They have their county commissioners and other things. So like it's even more useful for them. But it also adds you to our network. So like you'll get emails about upcoming trainings, like Emily's List if they're doing a training, or any other group. And then also like, you know, we also do endorsements. So Jordan Thompson, for example, early, I'm just gonna do it early. We're supposed to be next week, but Jordan is going to be one of our endorsed candidates. We are rolling out a pretty big New Hampshire class, so we're really excited about it. But we're here to support our candidates. So definitely check out, you know, runforwhat.net. Just drop it in the chat. I work, you know, my region is from Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, all the way up to New England. So it's I work with candidates in all sorts of races, and but obviously I hold a very special place in my heart for New Hampshire candidates because you know, I see this before my very own eyes. So so check out our website, and you know, thank you for having me, because we're you know, the problems that New Hampshire is facing are not, we're not the only ones. Like, you know, these folks who are showing up to on these like anti-critical race theory folks are showing up in Tennessee, they're showing up in Texas, they're showing up in Arizona. So they're all over. It's like a national plan. So, you know, we're trying to be kind of antidote to that, to really kind of help these young folks who are like, you know what, we can't have this in my community. What do I do? Like, what do I do? Like, how do I run? And so we're here to show them, like, you know, build your list of, you know, you make some phone calls, raise some money, then you go out, knock on some doors with some pop cards, and, you know, we do the best we can to get you elected. So, but we'll, you know, I'm really excited. We have an awesome guide, so definitely check it out. And we're really excited to get cracking here in New Hampshire.
And I just want to say the youth are really rocking this, because between what Manny's doing, between our moment, which is the PAC that Jordan mentioned, the youth movement, and New Hampshire Young Dems, they put out candidates and they got most of their folks elected. So they were the bright spot in the 2020 election. So we really need to tune in and listen to their advice. And, you know, we went from the discussion in the first part of the program to the discussion here, going into more of the solutions, because we want to, you know, as hard as it is to hear what this session has been like and seeing what we're seeing unfolding at school boards, there are steps and actions that we can take up. And we've heard a lot tonight about, you know, running for things, helping to recruit people to run, as Liz did. That's a really key thing to do. Showing up for events, showing up for individuals, particularly those that are vulnerable. There are a host of ways we can show up. So I was just going to turn to a few questions from the chat, and then we're going to wrap it up. This is not the only meeting we're going to have on this topic. This was the broader topic of kind of the rise of extremism. And so we'll be revisiting the issue, but this is a really great introduction. And I really want to thank our panelists for being here. And, you know, I'll direct some questions to you, but I'll just say thank you, and a special thank you to Liz McConnell for leading the discussion. But mostly I want to say thank you for all the amazing work you're doing.
It's a blast.
So one of the questions that came up quite a bit in the chat was about going back to really the Free State movement, is the sense that people have that people know so little about it, and not just the Free State movement, but the other, like at the National School Board, when the neo-Nazis showed up, you know, when the Proud Boys showed up. How do we get this more into the press and make sure they're really covering it as the problem it is? And then how do we educate people beyond that about really what the intentions are and the goals are? And that was a question that came to us from a number of people. Melanie, that was one of your questions, and Sarah Smith, but a number of people, that was a theme running through the chat, is this is great to know this, but how do we get the word out? So if folks could say a few words about that, that would be helpful. So,
Yeah, I can certainly start. I will say letters to the editor, op-eds, that is probably the number one way that we're going to be able to pitch this to the media. I will say that unfortunately, the media in New Hampshire has largely not covered what has happened, for example, in Nashua around the issue of the white supremacists, the Proud Boys, the neo-Nazis. There's kind of hesitancy on their behalf to do what happened in 2015 and 2016, which is give a platform to, you know, white supremacists, and then one of them became president of the United States. So I think a lot of them are very, very skeptical, and they're being very cautious for good reason. But I've had a lot of good conversations with outlets like NHPR, New Hampshire Bulletin, Union Leader, and I've said to them, look, you know, I understand your hesitancy around covering this, but you can be a responsible journalist and cover this and center the perspectives of the people impacted. You don't have to give the white supremacists a platform. Folks have been doing it, you know, back to the days of Ida B. Wells, of covering these acts of violence in a way that is true to their narrative without giving them the white supremacists a platform. So we really have to continue to try to put some pressure onto those outlets. And I've been trying to challenge them to recognize that when they don't cover a story, the people in the community that the story is directly impacted, that they just feel very let down. They feel let down by their outlets. They feel like no one's listening to them. They feel like, I've heard so many things from folks in the Nashua area, how frustrated they are, and they want to keep showing up to these meetings, but they feel like, you know, the larger state or the larger region is not paying attention. And then, of course, this third part of when you don't cover the story, you give these white supremacists and these hate groups and these extremists full control over the narrative. Even though they may be the minority, the other folks in the picture, unfortunately, have to suffer from the full scope of the narrative that they've created already. So letters to the editor, you know, writing to your local publications, just getting it out there in an op-ed, it's really, really important because this stuff matters. And as I said before, if it's happening in Nashua, it can happen anywhere in the state. I know that sometimes Nashua has this image as being like very tolerant and accepting. So how on earth could that happen here? We also live in a very divided age on the term Nazi. And so when you go up to the average person in Nashua and you say, hey, like there were neo-Nazis at the board meeting, they don't really think that you're talking about real neo-Nazis. They think, you know, you're being hyperbolic. And no, these people are literally self-identified neo-Nazis. So I hope that answers sort of the question here, that it has to be this mix of really adding some pressure to the media to cover this because it's an important topic, and doing some education within the community of like, this is really happening here. Your taxpayer dollars are going to fund education and you need to be at these board meetings. It's a mix of all of those things.
thank you.
And I'll just add, like, you know,
Yep.
I've been trying to, like, I remember when they showed up, and I had a conversation with one of our a WMUR person. Well, I had a conversation with Adam Sexton, and I was like, hey, so are you all gonna finally cover this, or like you guys gonna just act like, you know, like this doesn't exist? And that's, you know, that's just a real thing that we have to have with our press. Like, you know, do we want to give them light? Like, of course we don't want to, like, you know, make them amplify them, but at the same time we have to address that this is happening. And you know, as I know most of y'all probably know this, like the National Telegraph was once a great paper, but local press is dying, and is being bought out by conglomerate papers. And so because of it, you are seeing, you know, like school board meetings and even Board of Aldermanic meetings are not being covered. And without that transparency, people don't know what their elected officials are doing, which is a problem. So I think, you know, having, like, making sure that, you know, whether it's convincing MUR, whether it's convincing NHPR, New Hampshire Bulletin, Concord Monitor, whoever it is, and trying to get them their attention at this, it's so important. So having those conversations, just reaching out to them directly and just saying, hey, we like really need you to cover this.
Yeah, it was great to have Anne Marie Timmons there yesterday at the, covering the fiasco. Liz, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just feel like, yes, you need to walk into this and be present. So many times I turn around and I say, oh my God, who am I that I have to do this? But this is who we are, and you have to do it. And the more you do it, the more you can bring other people along with you to put that protest out there, to say, no, this is wrong. These are Nazis here. It is neo-Nazis. This is wrong. We can't abide by this. So,
And then, of course, it's, that effort to really let people know what's going on under the dome. And we hear that the speaker is adamantly working to shut down not only remote access and participation, but also now live streaming, and claiming that they can't afford to do that. And so, if that happens, we need to fight for, and that's something everyone here should contact the speaker, Speaker Packard, and demand that he open these meetings and have remote access, not only so, it's a compliance issue for the ADA, it's so people who are, don't have transportation, so that more people can participate in our democracy. And at the very least, these meetings need to be live streamed, but really there should be remote access and participation. And tomorrow, Rennie Cushing versus Packard is being heard and argued in the Federal Circuit Court. And the US Justice Department weighed in on that, saying that, this is, the ADA is implicated. So that's a fight that we need to fight, because these folks are, for all their cries of freedom, they're trying to shut us out of the process. That's what it comes down to. It's a process for them and not for us, and we can't allow that to happen. So we're gonna wrap up. Instead of asking this as a question, really, I mean, if people have thoughts on it, feel free to answer. But what I think one of the things that we're going to have to figure out, and I don't think we have figured it out yet, is, and this was a stream of questions also in the chat, what do we do when people show up and just shout down the school board, or shout down a hearing, or intimidate people so that they don't, feel like they can walk into a meeting? How do, one of the complaints, and it was a legitimate one, as I think I said earlier at the hearing yesterday, was they didn't have a big enough room, and all the people who showed up and wanted to participate couldn't. Certainly remote access could help that one as well. But how are we going to deal with these overtly confrontational tactics that are being used? The Granite Rock celebrated this. Today, it went up from Rebuild New Hampshire. We won a victory yesterday. We were outside, they were outside, they were cheering, they were ecstatic, and it just emboldens them. There's no consequences. It's done with impunity. The question is, what are the responses? Are there legal responses that we should think about? Are there mediators? Are there some sorts of interventions? I don't know that we necessarily have the answers to these questions. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that briefly, and then we'll wrap up for the night, because we're coming up on 8:30. But
I'll just say briefly that there's no easy answer to this question, because it's still something that we're trying to workshop every single day. And it's a question that we're especially the organizers and the candidates on the ground are really feeling the full force and brunt of every single day. We're struggling to remain active and engaged and to show up. But what really helps me sometimes is to remember that these folks are the minority. I know that feels so like difficult to think about when they're shouting in your face and it feels like they're so overwhelming. But when I look at, for example, the school board meetings, that day that the Proud Boys showed up, there were 12 of them. There were easily 70, 80 of us that showed up to support education and science and common sense. The day that the neo-Nazis showed up, there were about 12 of them. There were easily, almost 100 of folks that came in support of the Board of Education. So there are way more of us than there are of them. And they use tactics that are very in your face. They're trying to escalate, they're trying to intimidate. They're trying to win every single battle that they can, but we have to stay focused because we're trying to win this war. We're trying to win this like long game that ultimately is going to be for the future. That we may not even be here for, but we're ultimately working towards something bigger than the right now, bigger than reacting to everything that may not be going our way like they are. So I don't have an easy answer. I wish I had an easy answer because I need an easy answer. But I think we just got to keep pushing. We got to keep showing up. We got to keep showing our strength in numbers, whether that's door knocking, whether that's canvassing in another way, whether that's writing letters to the editor, emailing legislators, showing up to meetings like this. Like everybody that is on this call today showed up, and that's important to continue to do in order for us to really win this fight.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of people who showed up today, actually. I keep thinking, how many of these people are going to run? What do you think, Manny? What should our percentage be of the, well, right now there's only 106. So let's see. I mean, really, can we get like 5%, 10%? I mean, really.
Like 20 or 30 of them.
Well, I know, but realistically.
I got some good names on here.
All right. Well, you know what? I'll take the email list, Louise, and I will start calling those people that are on that list and just say, hey, what did you think? It was easy, relatively, and you've got support too.
There's
That's
strength
good.
in numbers, right? So,
Right.
but I really,
I just saw somebody say I'm in. I didn't see who it was though.
but I really appreciate each one of you again for participating here tonight, but for more importantly for the work that you do, because you help lead the way and you guide us and inspire us. And that's how I'm coming out of this meeting, feeling inspired. And, we took a hiatus over the summer. I'm really ready to get back out there into the fight because we can do this. We can do it. We showed we did it, in Bedford, and we're going to do this. Jordan in Nashua, invited the peacekeepers in, and he turned what could have been a really volatile situation into a situation where people felt safe participating in their school board meeting. And that's the bottom line. We want people to participate in democracy. We want people of all views to participate. That's the goal here, is to, build a civic culture where that's possible. And so, again, I want to kind of end where we began. We're not against any of these folks from engaging in the process and doing it with passion and speaking out. But they need to do it with respect, not only for the individuals involved, but for the democratic process. Because that's, if there's a New Hampshire advantage, shouldn't that be it? I think that should be the real advantage, is that we listen and care about each other. So I think with that, we'll wrap up the meeting. I thank everyone for staying. It was a long meeting, but full of just amazing information and as I said, inspiration. And that's what I know I need a lot of. This is recorded. It will be available. We will send out some of the links that we talked about here. And we will, keep talking about this and about other issues. And I have to turn it back to as a thank you to all of you who came tonight, because that's what it really takes. It takes each one of us doing the things that we can do. And if there's something that I truly value about Kent Street, it's that we really mean that when we say that. There are all different ways to participate. We just need people to show up and do it. So thank you. You showed up tonight. We appreciate you all. And thanks for joining in.
Thank you. It was awesome.
Thank you.